Hello friends, this is Utz, and today we're doing the quick killer guide for the Executioner. Pyramid Head has a complex and intricate power, but if you take the time to master it, you can easily become one of the most powerful and oppressive killers in the game. His teachable perks have been buffed recently, but they are not very powerful or popular, so you probably won't be playing him just to get them. In terms of weaknesses, the Executioner does have a few that are worth noting. He has poor synergy with hook-related perks such as barbecue and chili. His mobility is entirely unremarkable, which means big maps and survivors that just keep running you around will be a bit of an issue. And he also has a difficult learning curve. There's a lot of decision making and mechanical skill involved. It's gonna take a long time before you really get good with him. If you do decide to do that, he does come with many strengths that you'll probably come to appreciate. He can counter virtually every hook related perk for the survivors, which includes some of the strongest ones such as Decisive Strike. He also renders most loops unsafe, meaning that a good Pyramid Head can hit you basically anywhere. He, as a result, also leaves very little room for mistakes. One small mistake from one or multiple survivors can easily turn any match around for Pyramid Head. And to learn how to do that, we're gonna go over some basic facts about him. He boasts a standard 32-meter turret radius and moves again at a standard 115% movement speed, which is 4.6 meters per second. When he holds the power button, he will plant his sword on the ground, and this will slow him down to 92% movement speed for 1 second. And then he'll move at a steady 110% while he holds it. If this is cancelled, then he'll be slowed down again to 92% for 1 more second before returning to normal speed once again. Planting his sword on the ground is how Pyramid Head enables both of his main abilities, the trails that he leaves on the ground and the range attack that he can project forwards. This range attack is called the Punishment of the Dam. It has a hitbox of about 1 meter wide and exactly 8 meters long, which can be extended with add-ons, by the way. Any and all survivors caught in this hitbox during the attack will all take 1 health state of damage. The best way to visualize how this punishment works is to think of it as a piano keyboard. When the punishment attack begins, the keys are played one by one, start to finish, meaning that a survivor who is very far away will actually take longer and one that is close will get hit earlier. These piano keys have a small vertical hitbox as well, so survivors who are slightly elevated can still be hit by the punishment. But if they're too high up, the attack will miss them. You'll notice that the hitbox goes right through any obstacle and it can hit survivors behind basically any wall in the game. If you try to aim it uphill, the attack will not climb up because the hitbox can never bend upwards. It can, however, bend downwards. Each individual key of the piano has a center that can be slightly lower than the center of the previous key. If you find a slope that is gradual enough where each key can incrementally go down, you can make the hitbox actually go downhill. You can really push this to its limits by aiming downstairs to hit an unsuspecting survivor that is waiting at the bottom. However, if the center of one of these keys cannot find solid ground to land on because the drop is too steep, then the attack will be cut short and stop right there. So in summary, punishment can go down, it can go through, but it cannot go up, and it also cannot jump into thin air. You'll also notice that while you drag the sword, your movement is limited, and you can only move forwards and not backwards or sideways, and also that the sensitivity is hard to get used to. You'll need a lot of time and practice to get used to it and really know how to move properly, but in the meantime, we're gonna go over some practical examples on when and how to use punishment. And one thing that many people don't realize is that your punishment can be an excellent replacement for your basic attack. If you find yourself in a situation where you're basically guaranteed to hit the survivor because they really don't have much of a choice, let's say that you found them and cornered them somewhere, going for a basic attack will give you a cooldown of 3.2 seconds before you move at full speed again, whereas the Punishment of the Dam only has a cooldown of 2.25 seconds. So with punishment, you'll catch up to the survivor a lot quicker. Do keep in mind though that punishment is a special attack and not a basic attack, so if you have perks like Sloppy Butcher or Know It, anything like that, that will not trigger with a punishment attack. Another very convenient situation for you where you really get to use your strengths is during rescues that happen right in front of you. Survivors who unhook in front of you are susceptible to a double hit if you time it right. You basically want to ready up your attack, and wait until the survivor that is off the hook fully lands on the ground before you release it. If you time it well, this will often result in a double hit unless they really use that heart extremely well on a very precise input. During cage rescues, it's basically the same. The timing, as you can see, is very similar. But don't forget that the further you are from the target, the more accurate you'll need to be, and the earlier you'll have to release the attack to make up for the distance that it takes to travel. Different distances will require slightly different timings. This is something that you'll get better and better over time. Another situation that will land you a lot of easy hits are bottlenecks, places of the map where the survivor physically cannot dodge the width of your punishment of the dam. If you find a very long one like this, do not hesitate, let go of your attack. The survivor for the most part will be unable to dodge it. The shorter ones will require better timing. The survivor will probably identify and try to bait it, so be careful, don't jump the gun, wait until you actually see them go through, then release the attack. Pallets and windows are typically used to gain distance on killers, but they're also a major source of hits for your punishment of the dam. If a survivor is locked in any animation involving these two, they are 100% able to be hit, and they are usually easy targets for you. If a survivor just finishes stunning you with a pallet, you can still release the attack right before and this will still hit them. However, survivors are aware that they're very easy targets, so they'll play very carefully around windows and pallets if you're close. For that reason, you need to pay attention to a lot of different factors. The first one being if they have an item. An item disappearing from the hands of a survivor is a clear cue that they've already committed to an action and they're about to, say, vault the window. If you see this, it is your cue to let go of your attack. You will 100% hit it. Survivors knowing this will often try to juke and fake to vault and drop pallets. This is where you need to drag your sword, get closer, and try to either body block it or get close enough so that you can cancel, catch up, and go for a normal hit. You will need to react fast sometimes, otherwise survivors will be able to get the vault or drop the pallet. Your best bet is to make an educated guess as to what they're going to do next and try to go for it. And if it doesn't work, that's okay, don't commit to it. You can break or vault and then follow after. Another major source of hits will come at loops, where you can perform the so-called quick turn punish. You chase a survivor around a somewhat large obstacle, they keep predictably looping around it, and at one point you quickly sharply turn the angle and release a punishment. If the survivor doesn't expect it, this is very easy and effective. However, survivors are often on the lookout for this kind of attack, and they will instead try to be unpredictable with their movement. Sometimes the best antidote for this is to just keep catching up to them, close the gap, and the closer you are, the less room they have for this kind of playstyle. We also will be getting a lot of hits behind walls. There are many perks that can read the aura of the survivor that can enable this kind of playstyle, but sometimes by just listening to footsteps and cries of pain, you can make accurate guesses and release an attack through a wall that has a pretty large chance to hit a survivor. Go crazy with this, it will get a lot better with practice, you will land some really mean hits. With time, you'll come to realize that survivors are often predictable and they repeat certain patterns at certain tiles. I have a video where I go in more detail over some of these advanced techniques, but this is something that you will figure out yourself as you play. But before then, we must learn about Pyramid Head's other power, the trails that he can leave on the ground, which are called the Rites of Judgment. These trails appear anytime Pyramid Head is dragging his sword on the ground and moving, and they will remain on the environment for 75 seconds, which can be increased by add-ons. However, there is a limit to how many of these trails can be in any map at any given time, and this cannot change by add-ons. So trust me, you do not want to carelessly draw trails all over the map. Instead, you want to be selective and focus on those places that will be most inconvenient for the survivors to avoid. If survivors come in contact with these trails, they'll become tormented, and we'll explain what that does in a minute. And this is something that you really want because it enables your other ability. Let's go over some scenarios of how you can make sure that survivors eventually do become tormented. If you find yourself a survivor that can be easily body blocked at a bottleneck, you can begin to leave a little bit of trail, and this will inevitably result in the survivor probably taking a hit and then being tormented, unless they want to go down right there, in which case it's also very good for you. You can do something similar to this if you know that multiple survivors are in a tight area. You can try to soft lock the area by leaving trails on the exits. Forcing many of them out at the same time will most likely result in some of them at least being tormented. You can also torment during your looping. Now, some pyramid heads will just draw torment all over the place, but this is not very efficient. Instead, what you probably want to do is to partially torment the choke points of a loop. The pallet, the window, maybe both, and that will be enough to stop survivors from going through there, probably pushing them aside if they don't want to step on the torment. Another useful idea is to hide torment in grass around corners, much like you would a bear trap from the trapper. You would be surprised how many times survivors are carelessly navigating the map, not really paying attention to the sound or visual cues, and accidentally stepping on these trails and becoming tormented. And if that is not enough, there's one final way to ensure that a survivor will be tormented, and that is to leave some trail in a place that they're about to step on. If you see a survivor go into a locker and you leave trail right in front of it, they will be tormented when they come out. If you think that they're going to escape your grasp because of decisive strike or a flashlight save, etc., you can also leave torment on the ground and they will step on it when they escape, guaranteeing that they get hit by it. And once they're hit by it, many good things happen. A survivor that is tormented reveals their killer instinct by 3 seconds. This makes them glow red and emits a heartbeat visual cue that you can follow that will give you an idea of where they're going if you don't see them from very close up. They will also begin to continuously and forever emit a barbed wire particle at their feet, and this makes it very easy to track them. Even survivors that are hiding around with iron will that would normally be easy to miss are much easier to see when this barbed wire is involved. But more importantly than this, being tormented enables Pyramid Head to use his final ability once a survivor is on the ground, which is the ability to cage them. The cages of torment are basically an alternative form of hooks. When you perform them, the survivor will be sent to a random location on the opposite side of the map. You won't see exactly where they end up, but you will get a loud noise notification if they are rescued, and you can also try to look around and find them before they are rescued. These cages have the exact same spawn points as the clocks from Freddy, so you might get an idea of where they appear. But do be careful, because if you stay too close to the survivor for too long, the cage will relocate again to the opposite end of the map so that you cannot camp it. This caging will occur for the first time, the first hook, and the second time, the second quote-unquote hook. But on the third time, instead of caging them, you will just be able to do your super quick special mori, which is the final judgment, which will kill the survivor immediately on the spot. So this alternative hooking method is generally very fast and very advantageous compared to the traditional hooks. In terms of time, there's truly no competition. For a normal hook, you're gonna look at 3 seconds to pick up the survivor, anywhere from 1 to 16 seconds of carrying the survivor around, and about a 2-second hook animation. And during all of this, you can be interrupted. The survivor can wiggle out if you don't have a hook available. There can be a pallet save, a flashlight save, a decisive strike. Many things can go wrong. Compare this to the cages, which only take 2 seconds to cage and 3 seconds to final judgment, which is the instant kill. And when these animations begin, there is no way to stop them. And after those 2 or 3 seconds, you're free to do whatever you want much faster than if you hook normally. On top of this, these cages also completely bypass and ignore all the hook related perks from both sides. Killer perks that trigger on hook, such as barbecue and chili, devour hope, Popo's the weasel, etc, 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 will not work with cages at all. This makes some of these perks less appealing on Pyramid Head, but if you can look past this small inconvenience, you will be robbing survivors of some of their strongest survivor perks as well. Decisive strike, borrowed time, deliverance, will make it, kindred, etc, etc, etc. All of those perks will be completely useless if you keep caging and caging them. The only notable exception to this being perhaps Atonement, which will still fully heal you after being uncaged because it's technically not an unhooking perk. So knowing all of this, and assuming that you have a tormented survivor that is down right in front of you, when should you cage and when should you not cage? As a general rule, caging is very fast and very convenient. That should be your default mode to always cage survivors, keep sending them off. But sometimes different situations call for specific measures. In my opinion, if you have the final judgment option available, always go for it. Killing a survivor that's dead on hook in 3 seconds is a really good deal for you. You can immediately pressure the other 2 or 3 survivors left. The only exception to this would be if you have a perk that activates on hook, such as Pop Goes the Weasel or Bloodwarden, and you really need it. If you really need it, then maybe it might be a good idea to pick up a survivor and hook him immediately if he is dead on hook. You might also want to hook a survivor if you know where the hatch is and you want to have a little bit of time. If you hook a survivor, they'll take about 10 seconds to die, and you can use that time to get to the hatch and then close it if there's one survivor left. If you immediately chop them in half, however, the hatch will open immediately, so this might give time to the fourth survivor that is left to escape. So in that situation, you might also want to hook. Another scenario where you 100% want to cage is if you suspect that there are survivor perks that you could be dodging. If it's an Atom and you think he might have Deliverance, cage him. If it's a Lori and you think they might have Decisive Strike, cage them. It is really good to outplay these perks early and not have to deal with them later. Sometimes, however, if none of these situations are in play, it can be a bit more nuisance and it can be a lot harder to decide when not to and when to actually send them in cages. I'm going to tell you the things that you should avoid. Do not send a survivor to another side of the map if the exit gates are nearly done. That could be really bad. They could get them out and then escape immediately. Do not send a survivor to the other end of the map if you think the entire team is there and they're all gonna save him immediately, especially if they have a generator that's about to be completed, because then they'll complete the gen and be just in time for the rescue. It will be very convenient for them. However, if you think the team is largely spread out, do send them out. If you think that you have someone near you that you can immediately chase after, do send them out. If you have multiple people and you want to cage one and hook another, do send them out. Do not, however, send them out if you have something that you want to defend. If you have a 3 generator next to you and you think that you can put someone in the hook and then stay there and just defend the area, it might be a better idea to hook. Obviously, you also want to hook if you want to use perks such as Barbecue and Chili and Pop, but these are perks that you probably don't want to be using on Pyramid Head very much. Another thing you want to consider is how many survivors are currently tormented. If you send a survivor that is tormented to a cage, that survivor will lose the torment, and whoever rescues them will also lose torment. So you might want to hook the first, then cage the second to avoid a scenario where both of them would be untormented at the same time. And with that, you should have a solid idea of what to do and not to do in each scenario. If you still are not sure, don't be afraid to just leave the survivor on the ground for 5 or 10 seconds and look around yourself. Sometimes after a quick peek, it can be very clear what is the right move. So don't be afraid to just gather a bit more information before you make your decision. But of course, for you to make a decision, you must first torment the survivor, and for you to keep doing that, you really need to play really well. So in order to help you do that, let's wrap this video up with 3 quick tips for the Executioner. The first one is to maximize your trail damage. At the start of the trial and throughout the match, as you move around, do not hesitate to waste 1 or 2 seconds here and there to put trails on key choke points that will prevent survivors from going there or force them into being tormented. It's very important to start early. If you have perks to let you know exactly where to go, this is even more powerful. If you have a perk like Discordance letting you know where multiple survivors are, you can carefully approach them and also begin to set trails along the way to really limit and cut their options of escape. Don't forget that there are some limits to where you can put your trails, however. You cannot put them too close to exit gate levers, you cannot put them too close to generators, you can also not put them too close to hooks, and they cannot be placed anywhere in the basement or the stairs leading to it. And on top of this, don't forget that if you draw a line of trail, survivors can actually go right through it by just crouching. They cannot interact with anything, even if they crouch, so you will still stop them from interacting with things, but your trail is not a hard wall that survivors will be stopped at. They can, if left alone, go through it without even being tormented. So for your trail to be truly effective, you'll have to be there pressuring them into not being able to crouch slowly through it. Next up is our tip number 2, which is to master your punishment timings. This comes again with loads and loads of practice, and the better the survivors you play against, the more valuable the practice is. Some general thoughts and guidelines: do not try to hit survivors in the open. They are very unpredictable and there's far too much room for mistakes. Instead, you want to use your punishment effectively in chase when the survivor is really forced to run tight and thus is more predictable. Your punishment of the dam has a 2.25 cooldown, even if you miss an attack. So if you find a survivor that is outpositioned in a really cornered part of the map where they really don't have enough time to get to the next loop, this can be a good time to actually spam your attack a couple times until you land that hit, because even if you miss, the survivor literally will not have time to make it to the next safe area. So in these situations, don't be afraid to try a couple times until you get that hit. And finishing up with tip number 3, which many pyramid heads still neglect, is to play into your unique strengths. Your unique strengths as pyramid head are the ability to hit multiple survivors, the ability to skip several lengthy hook transportations, and also the ability to get through hook stages very fast. You can hook a survivor and then immediately cage them, or hook them right after you cage them, or a combination or any of those things, which should result in survivors dying very quickly. You want your build and your playstyle to be tailored around these strengths. Every decision you make, every corner you push survivors into should be with these strengths in consideration. You keep doing that and you'll see just how much of a force to be reckoned with Pyramid Head can really be. I really hope to hear from you when you do that, maybe in the comment sections, but until then, that's all for me. I hope that you enjoyed this guide, and I'll see you in the next one.